Good morning, everyone. This is Piero San Giorgio. I'm happy again to have my friend James Howard Kunstler with us today.
It's
Hi.
a pleasure to be with you, Piero.
It is a pleasure, and today it's not only going to be a pleasure, it's going to be some education. Because I tell you the truth, I, as most Europeans, don't understand anything of what's happening in Minnesota. When we see the images, it seems that Somalia got really colder weather these years. What's happening in Minnesota?
Well, it's really not that complicated. It's a kind of a crypto quasi Bolshevik revolution being carried out by it's parties uncertain, shall we say, but most likely American crypto Bolsheviks, along with some help from the CCP, the Communist Party, the Communist Chinese Party, excuse me, the Chinese Communist Party, and yeah, a network of nefarious non-governmental organizations that are used as a money laundry to finance the whole thing. But it's a combination of dynamics that are very peculiar. On the one hand, you have a very disappointed and angry generation of young people whose prospects for a career or a fruitful life seems to be dim, and they perceive their prospects as being dim, and they're angry about it. And I can understand that. But you also have a lot of uh, uh, strange confusion going on that seems to be they seem to be under the influence of strange influencers. For one thing, they have all been prompted into this gender confusion business. Well, not all of them, but a great many of them. And that seems to be some kind of a mind-fucking operation. It's been pretty successful. I'm not sure how it intersects with environmental poisons and other things that might have disrupted their hormones or disrupted their psychology. There may be some of that in the picture. We know from clinical evidence that testosterone is much lower, but that can be a product of a psychological state, not necessarily environmental poison. But so there's that going on. There's the gender confusion, and many of the people who have been influenced into gender confusion have developed a kind of murderous attitude about the people who are they oppose. And so you're seeing, many instances of transgenders picking up a gun and shooting up churches and schools. Now that's not happening in Minnesota right now. That's not the issue, but it's part of the generational disruption and disorder that is going on at the moment. There's also the whole woman thing, which is that the emotional infrastructure of women has been hijacked to produce a certain effect. Um, and mainly two of their emotional modules. The first one is their women's tendency to seek agreement and inclusion in a group by being agreeable and by going along with whatever the current idea is. And the other thing that's been hijacked is their nurturing and maternal instinct. It has been redirected to the rescue of oppressed minorities and helpless, marginalized people. In this case, personified by the illegal immigrants who have landed in America. And so the women, a great many women involved in this business in Minnesota have been induced to try to rescue the illegal immigrants that were brought in by Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. So that's part of the dynamic that is producing the street action. And the men who are in the mix, some of them are men who are mentally ill in one way or another. Some of them are just what we call beta boys, low testosterone, uh, uh, agreeable, easily pushed around by women, by these women who have become hysterical over the deportation of illegal immigrants, the rounding up. They in their cosmic worldview, they see this as a great cruelty to helpless people. It's like they're protecting these helpless little animals. But the fact of the matter is that a substantial number of these helpless, marginalized creatures are murderers and rapists, and so there's a lot of insanity in the behavior of the women in the streets of Minnesota and their male accomplices. So there's that dynamic, but then there's what's really going on with the illegal alien program, which
But
is
why is that in Minnesota? I mean, what you describe seems to be a bit everywhere, right? In every city.
well, it's in a lot of the cities that are run by the Democratic Party. And of course, the cities are the places where there are more young people than the small towns or the rural places. We're in a demographic situation in America right now, and probably in most of Western civilization, where the cities are the magnets for young people, and they leave the rural places where there is no work for them, and they don't want to be farmers, and there's no way for them to make a life, so they go to the cities. And in the cities, they also encounter difficulty making a life because of various financial dynamics and inflation and the mischief that went on over the last 10 years. Everything is very expensive, and it's hard for them to find a place to live, and it's hard for them to buy food. And these are very fundamental things in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as the diagram goes. So it's understandable that they're upset about that. Uh, Meanwhile, this thing with artificial intelligence promises to shove them out of the intellectual work that they were supposedly trained for in the university. And in the background of that, there's the diversity, inclusion, and equity nonsense that is going on that militates against competence and tends to promote people who are, third-rate, fourth-rate people. So, we have a crisis of competence in the country, and all of that feeds back into the inability of young people to make a life and make a living. So there's that. The problems with the young people, the problems with the middle-aged women, especially the women who have opted out of motherhood, whose emotions have been redirected to the protection and rescue of the helpless. And then there's the Democratic Party and its need to use these immigrants for two purposes. One is to boost the census numbers. We take a census in the United States every 10 years by law, and the outcome of that census determines the size of congressional districts, or even whether the district will be abolished and changed, whether a redistricting map will be drawn. And so the Democrats have tried to stuff as many illegal aliens into certain places where they hope to either maintain their congressional districts or expand them. So that's the first part of the program. The second part is to use the illegal aliens as new voters, even though they are not entitled or qualified to vote. But because the American elections have been so perverted and so poorly regulated, a great many illegal aliens are voting, or at least their names are hijacked and their social security numbers are hijacked to enable a ballot to be submitted in their name. So, now there is a deep need in the United States to reform the election uh, codes and regulations and laws so that we will require photo ID of the voter and same day voting. None of this nonsense about spreading out the vote over 2 weeks or a month, early voting, late voting. It's, no mail-in ballots, no machine tabulation of the balloting by the Dominion Smartmatic machines, which seem to be very dishonestly programmed. There's plenty of evidence for that now. So all of this is sort of coming to a head. So what you're seeing in Minnesota is the Democratic Party is desperately trying to create a political climate where they will be able to keep their illegal aliens in the country and not get them deported, not allow the Trump party to deport them. It's very important to them. And the other part of the picture is that they are desperate to conceal the fraud that has been perpetrated by the Democratic Party using illegal aliens and indeed using all kinds of all sorts of people and groups to accomplish the fraud. It's not just the Somali immigrants. We suspect now, after some weeks of this story breaking, that the fraud is much bigger in places like California and New York City and Chicago than it is even in Minneapolis. It's just that in Minneapolis, it was the most easy to see. You had this one particular ethnic group, and you could tell who they were because they were Black Africans. And you could see that they were running these storefront operations that pretended to be, social services of one kind or another, either childcare or medical clinics or some other thing. And there was nobody there,
Mhm.
that they were not really operating anything. And then it was easy to determine that they were phony. And then it was easy to determine how much money was coming into each one. But there were a lot of them. So there's a lot of this all over the country, but the Minnesota case was very, very clear. And another part of the story is the apparent participation of the major political figures in Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, and the mayor of Minneapolis, and the attorney general of the state of Minnesota, and a great many other fairly high public officials who were ignoring the fraud and probably, or perhaps, let's say possibly, being paid off, getting kickbacks, and were informed. The officials were informed by the lesser public workers that there was something fishy going on for years. These characters that we call whistleblowers, they blow the whistle on mischief, right? On crime. So these characters called whistleblowers would report to their department heads or the commissioner of some activity or public health activity, and nothing would be done for years and years. And so there is plenty of reason to believe that the governor and the mayor and all of these people were in on the fraud. Now, the mills of the law grind very slowly, and it takes a lot of time and effort to make cases that can be brought to court. And I think that we're in the process of doing that now. And so there is no apparent accountability going on at the moment, but I think we have an expectation that there will be serious accountability. It's just that it takes time and effort. And there is yet another wrinkle in the story, which is that a large number of appointed judges, both in the state of Minnesota, in all the so-called blue states, the Democrat-controlled states, and also at the federal judge level, are very antagonistic to Mr. Trump and to his Justice Department, which is, investigating and will prosecute a lot of this. So even if a case is made, it can be very easily dismissed or disrupted by a hostile federal judge. And these are the kinds of dynamics that are going on there now. A lot of it just seems plain crazy and insane, but that's because the psychological component of the story, the programmed mindfuckery, has been so successful, especially with these crazy women who are out on the street screaming and spitting, like they were animals at these officers.
Now,
And that's the whole story, pretty much, Piero.
these ICE looks like police. These ICE people. Now we know CIA, we know FBI. What is this new three-letter organization?
ICE is simple. It's immigration control and
Okay.
enforcement. Immigration control and enforcement. They are the group of people who have to find the illegal aliens and then take custody of them and then put them on the airplane and get them out. So they have a very clear mission. They're not there to stop housebreakers and murderers and robbers and traffic violations and other common crimes. They are there to find the illegal migrants and get them out of the country.
Okay.
And they operate under, a particular federal agency, which is the Department of Homeland Security. They
Uh,
used they used to operate under the Department of Justice, but then with a thing called the Patriot Act, which is a comprehensive reorganization of the national security apparatus after the 9/11 business. The ICE was put under the new Department of Homeland Security that was created in 2001, 2002 at the time. And that's what they do.
in Europe, a lot of the media, which are of course the mainstream media, um, run what you explained is very different from what the media are telling us. Well, for those who listen to them, but I don't. But the mainstream media here basically say, "Oh, Trump is becoming a dictator. He's having these ICE people shooting people." So the spin on the story is that Trump is like the new American Hitler
Yeah,
again.
this is just childish bullshit.
Okay.
Now, the question it raises for us is, when did all of these newspaper reporters and television reporters become Bolsheviks? How did that happen?
Yeah.
And what are their intentions? What are their motives? Who's paying them? Are they just crazy, or are they sincere Bolshevik revolutionaries? Are they Jacobin communists? What are they? It's hard to believe that so many of them truly are political radicals. I don't believe it. I think that there's something else going on.
Well, they are funded by very, very rich people, which I suppose are really not Bolsheviks.
No, but and there's also the case that uh, people who have good jobs in mainstream journalism do not want to lose their jobs because it is very hard, as we said earlier, it's very hard for somebody in, some intellectual job market to find a way to make a living.
Yeah.
So, once you lose that job on a newspaper or at a television network, what do? You're going to start a Substack or a blog, you know, only
Learning to code.
well, yeah, well, only one out of 10,000 people can successfully make a living writing a blog.
Yeah.
There are millions and millions of people who try to start one every day, and it's very, very hard. I think we must assume that what mainly motivates the people in the mainstream press is the fear of losing their jobs, and that they're not actually sincere revolutionaries or even necessarily so-called progressives. They're just uh, they're just fearful people who want to keep on sitting at a computer terminal and making 1,000 euros a week or whatever they get paid.
Now, the majority of the population in the US, I presume, because it's been a while now, I've not been since I'm banned from coming in the US. But is there the silent majority, as we used to say, surely isn't for this kind of nonsense.
No, and in fact, a lot of these matters, a lot of these issues are what we call 80-20 issues. And it's interesting that, it follows the Pareto distribution, which is so common in all kinds of human enterprise, right? The Pareto 80-20 distribution. For example, there are probably 80% of the people in America do not think it's a good idea for men, biological men, to be in women's sports.
Mm.
Now, many of us would just call that common sense. And the reason it's called common sense is because the overwhelming majority of 80% of the people understand that it's ridiculous, that it's not fair to the women and that it's sexually perverse to expose these, teenage girls to men. They don't want to see that. So that's an 80-20 issue. I you know the I think that there are probably similar distributions for all of these other things like attacking the ICE officers and you know just getting the illegal aliens out of the country, especially the ones that are being held in jails. And part of this conflict is that in the Democratic run cities and states where they have illegal aliens in the prison, the authorities will not release these illegal aliens to ICE for deportation, despite the fact that, you have a guy who's a murderer in jail in Chicago. They won't turn him over. And this has been one of the hinge issues in the whole conflict is that the Trump people are insisting that the state and city authorities cooperate with ICE, and they refuse. So, how this will be resolved. Mr. Trump is trying to play the game as intelligently as possible. And that means, knowing when to cut, as the old song about playing poker goes, know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? Your cards. So in Minnesota, the whole thing was becoming such a bad public relations, such bad optics, that he decided to try another approach. And so his new approach was to send the head of ICE, Tom Homan, to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, to try to finesse the issue. I think what happened is that Mr. Homan went into Minneapolis and told these guys that they were going to be held criminally responsible for impeding the deportation of illegals, and that they were also very possibly going to be liable for criminal fraud allegations, and that they better stop screwing around, or they were going to be in even deeper trouble. And so anyway, things have calmed down in Minnesota now. There's the appearance that ICE has reduced its operations, but I don't think that that's so. I think that the ICE operations are continuing in Minneapolis, but they have cooled down the situation by beginning to control the politicians. The
Mhm.
politicians have behaved very, very recklessly, and they're going to pay a big price. I think that the governor, Tim Walz, is going to find himself in prison, and the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, will also be in prison. Possibly the attorney general. Ultimately, they will be in prison.
Hmm. Well, otherwise, it looks a lot like a third world or underdeveloped nation kind of situation, and this is not the United States you have known since your childhood, and certainly not the United States I've known since I was traveling there since the 70s.
Well,
The turbulent times.
Minneapolis. Yeah, Minneapolis is what's going on there now is not exactly what is being portrayed on TV. Um, it is still a in many ways an ordinary white majority city of Midwesterners of a certain fairly even temperament. Now, historically, Minnesota has a somewhat strange, by U.S. standards, somewhat strange political history. The Democratic Party in Minnesota merged with another movement in the early 20th century called the Farm Labor Movement, and the Minnesota Farmer Party. And so the Democratic Party in Minnesota has the name of the Democratic Farmer Party or Farming Party or something like that. And that farming party tended to be a little bit more socialistically radical at the time in the 20th century.
Minnesota
When
was settled mostly by Germans, Swedes, Norwegians,
yes, Scandinavians, yeah,
hence the socialist leaning.
yes, and there's a certain phenomena that I call the persistence of culture. Where a certain trend is set at a time in history, at a place in history, and it remains, it persists over time, no matter how much history changes. There's some residue of that earlier state of things. And that is the case in Minnesota, where you have what used to be a fairly large conservative population with a sprinkling of socialists. And somehow this has all gotten turned inside out and upside down. There was a very popular radio show for about 30 years in the USA called The Prairie Home Companion that was broadcast out of Minneapolis or St. Paul, the sister city next door across the river, by a guy named Garrison Keillor. He got destroyed in the Me Too movement about 8 years ago and for something really dumb. Apparently, he touched the shoulder of of a woman employee, and she accused him of sexual misconduct for doing that. If you can imagine how ridiculous that sounds. But by that time, he was ready to retire, and he just didn't want to fight, and he just, faded away. But his show was very, very popular all over the United States. And he had a number of running gags in the show. One of them was how all the people of Minnesota were above average. All the children, especially, were above average. And, a lot of jokes about white people and jokes about Norwegian bachelor farmers. And so for many of us, that really seemed to characterize the people of Minnesota, that they were these, kind of straight up, somewhat funny, self-satisfied conservative people with true blue American values. But what's happened in the meantime is that a lot of the youth of the Midwest has become disaffected, and the women, especially the adult women, and the women who either no longer have children in the house or never had a child, have been programmed and hijacked to turn into hysterical maniacs.
I will have to.
I hope this explains the
Yeah.
situation to your listeners, because it's a little bit complex, but it's not that hard to understand. I mean, you have similar dynamics in Europe as far as the mindfuckery goes.
Oh yeah.
In Germany, you have this dynamic of uh, the long-running program to manipulate the shame of the Germans for electing Adolf Hitler and going along with his program, until the end of the war.
Yeah.
So, they apparently can't overcome that shame. And
Yeah.
and we see the results. The result is, they invite the whole third world into Germany.
In fact, it's not shame, it's guilt. It's
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
no, I think there is a semantic importance
I
because
understand.
and indeed, northern European northern people do have a culture of guilt, in the sense that they can be, maybe it's the Protestant religion, or maybe it's the cold winters, not sure, but certainly the northern part of Europe, starting with starting with the Alps north, you can guilt people into submission. The
Yeah.
southern part of Europe is like the Middle East or Africa, or at least North Africa, where it is like, or Japan, where it's a culture of shame. Ask a Japanese or an Italian what he feels about whatever bad things they did or their people did in World War II, for example, and certainly the Japanese did a lot of stuff. Um, they will not feel at all any guilt.
Because
They
they didn't
will,
do it.
because they didn't do it. It was their grandparents.
Yeah.
Whereas the Germans, they feel guilt and they can pay money forever because of
Yeah.
that. And now, however, a Japanese or an Italian, if you catch them to do something that is not culturally right in their own culture, they will feel really ashamed, and they will contrive, and they will be, to some extent, the Japanese would kill themselves, right?
Yeah.
And some other countries have other kinds of culture, but certainly you cannot guilt, let's say, an Arab over the slave trade, which they had way more slaves than the Atlantic slave. They cut the balls to all of them. It was a massive slave trade. They don't care. It's like,
Yeah.
well, it's not me. Whereas even today, you can guilt the Americans or even the Europeans about some slave trade that they had nothing to do with, because it was many, many years ago. So yeah, that is it's interesting that you're right, the culture subsidizes, no, stays over
Persists.
time,
Yeah.
persists. Yes, and this is something, because I remind, for those who don't know James, that James is a successful and prolific author of many, many great books: Long
Thank you.
Emergency, A World Made by Hand series, and Too Much Magic, which I thoroughly love to translate into French. And of course, you have a blog, kunstler.com,
Yeah.
and I will put all the links below. It's really great. And what you describe, you know, and your blog is a very interesting chronicle of the madness that is going on because but certainly too much magic touched a bit on what is happening right now.
And there's yet another module of the story that I left out, which is what is the Democratic Party actually up to, and how has it changed? So the Democratic Party in the USA used to be the party of the working people, and we had a very large class of laborers, factory workers, people who worked with their hands, people who were in unions, and so on. And the Democratic Party represented their interests, through most of the 20th century. But when the working class dwindled, and there were fewer and fewer factories in America, and less industry, and fewer people working in industry, the Democratic Party was bereft of a purpose. And what developed after the 1980s is a party that has become mainly a racketeering operation, a criminally a criminal racketeering operation. And by that I mean making money, devoted to making money dishonestly. And what happened most recently in the last 15 to 20 years is that the Democratic Party constructed this matrix of non-governmental organizations that they use to flush money to the people who work for them. For instance, you have a large group of young people graduating from college every year, and we are in a situation that Peter Turchin, the economic philosopher, calls elite overproduction. The phrase ought to be self-explanatory. We are producing too many college graduates for not enough positions.
Yeah.
So one of the solutions for that was for the Democratic Party to contrive to construct this network of non-governmental organizations to give jobs to all of these young people who are coming out of the university who otherwise can't find jobs in the private sector. So you have all these people who are being well paid in NGOs, in USAID NGOs and the medical NGOs and this whole immense collection of them. And, they're making enough money to live decently and afford apartments and, go out for drinks with their friends. But they're not really doing anything. A lot of these organizations just are devoted to fake work, either
Mm.
fake work or some sort of, political organizing work, which is nothing more than marshaling votes
Yeah.
for the next election. So
Yeah,
you
it
have a
looks a
lot
lot.
of these people are getting paid. It is what used to be called in America a patronage system. Okay. And you have the same thing in other countries as well.
Oh yeah.
But it's particularly deeply developed in the USA by the Democratic Party as a racketeering operation. It is a criminal enterprise. And they have been trying to conceal it. And this is apart from the fraud that is taking place. Although, well, it's not apart from it. It's a component of it, but it's not the fraud itself. The NGOs do assist with the fraud, which
Yeah,
is simply
it's amazing.
misbilling.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we do see this in Europe. And this is very common in different ways in third world countries, by the way.
And to finally to conclude what my the picture I'm trying to paint here, the Democratic Party has become a racketeering operation with no real philosophical or political programming. It no longer has that. Its only programming now is to survive, to keep its racketeering going, to keep the criminal enterprise going. That's all. They have no interest in the real issues that the world is confronting right now for, the competition for resources, the reorganization of urban life on the ground, the energy quandary that we find ourselves in,
Yeah.
the how labor is going to manage the introduction of artificial intelligence. The Democratic Party is not interested in managing any of these problems. They're simply interested in keeping their thing going, the Casa
It's
Nostra.
it seems a lot that we are, maybe with some delay from what we both wrote in our books, we are at the crucible, at the connecting phase, at the nexus, whatever the name is,
Yeah,
of this trigger that is bringing an acceleration of the collapse, which was there but slow. But now it's
yeah.
accelerating.
Yeah, and that that's a very interesting point you raise because so far we have not really brought that
Sorry. No,
because
someone was calling. I had to put it on mute. Sorry.
yeah, sure. So far we have not brought that element into the picture. But all of the whole collapse scenario is grinding away in the background of the this political friction that's going on. So in the background, you have the destruction of currencies and money. You have the misallocation of resources into private racketeering of various investment schemes. You have the resource problem, is becoming especially acute in Europe. We have news over the last week that the Germans are expecting electric brownouts in the weeks ahead because their natural gas storage is so low.
And from be careful with Germans. From brown house, they can go to brown shirts again.
Yeah, well, that's there you go. In fact, that's one of the things that I've been wondering about is when does the political distress in Germany get translated into real political action, not just talking
Yeah.
and arguing and debate,
Oh, it
you
will
know,
come
and
sooner or later. Later would be sooner is that, and later is when the fridges are empty. But for sure, it
yeah,
will come.
yeah. So uh, the long emergency that I wrote about is grinding away in the background, and this is one of the great fears that I have about Mr. Trump's ability to carry out his counter-revolution against this
Yeah.
against this actually small number of Bolsheviks, American Bolsheviks, who are now, or Jacobins, whatever you want to call them, who are now operating. I was reminded this morning by an essay that somebody sent me about what a small number of Bolsheviks what a small number of Bolsheviks it took to turn Russia upside down in 1917.
Oh yeah.
And the large Russian population just sort of sat on the sidelines watching this happen, while a couple of 100,000 Bolsheviks got control of the apparatus of all of the apparatus of power, and then they went about murdering their opponents.
Yes.
And I don't want that to happen with the Democratic Party in the United States. It
No, for
it
sure.
it, it looks like an even more criminal enterprise than the Bolsheviks looked like in 1917. You could say that the Bolsheviks of 1917 in Russia were sincere reformer revolutionaries. Now, they might have had a murderous program, but they were, probably sincere about changing the country and getting rid of, the monarchy and
Yeah,
and all that.
I think it's correct to say that. And
But in America, I don't think that they're sincere revolutionaries. I think they're simply a mafioso.
Yeah. Well,
Political mafioso.
when the I don't know if they understand what you describe in the long emergency as a future that is more and more here. But certainly instinctively, they are going from mafia and theft to pillage, which is really not the same thing. And we see this
Yeah,
definitely in Europe, in Britain, in France. The ruling classes, including the oligarchs, are killing the golden goose and pillaging the country to go where I don't know, because wherever they're going to go with the money and the resources they took, it will be taken from them from the place where in the places they go. They cannot go to China.
yeah.
It,
They're not going to
so
hide in Davos.
no, we will take care of them if they come here, and if they go to Bahamas or a nice sunny place, well, the locals will take them. So this is delusional, but then delusional people do exist. So yeah.
Well, let me ask you, you have this character in Europe who is an important authority figure who is responsible for a great deal of damage done to the the countries of Europe.
Hmm.
That's Ursula von der
Oh,
Leyen.
I thought you meant the Pope.
No,
Okay.
him I
Yeah.
don't care about too much.
No, no, but it's the same. I mean, the
Yeah,
institution
well,
does a lot of damage.
but I'm curious to know, what do you suppose her motives are? Because it's very hard to even find a theory that fits Ursula von der Leyen's desire to destroy Europe.
You bring a very good example because when the motivations of people who are childless homosexuals, and I have nothing against homosexual per se, but
Well, you have to say that, right?
no, I have to say that because it's true. I mean, it's not that is not the underlined word
I
in the
have something
sentence.
against them. I do now. I have something against them at this point in history,
Okay.
and what I have against them is it's simple. Marginal behavior belongs on the margins,
Okay, I agree
and
with
I'll
that.
leave it at that.
I agree with that. And actually, most homosexuals, I guess, would agree with that as well.
I think so too. I think they'd be happier on the
Oh
margins.
yeah, and as they always been in history,
Yes,
except in Muslim
but
countries
anyway,
where they
I
have to.
interrupted your thought.
Anyway, so I think that contrary to some people like Macron or Starmer or Scholz, who are or even before Merkel,
MERS.
who are childless people who don't care about the future and have an incentive to pillage and perhaps even a deep autodestructive tendency to their own to the people they are presiding over through fake and corrupt election processes, by the way. um, this woman, van der Leyen, as we call her here, she is she has children. I think she has 5 kids. So she is
Yeah.
and it's an interesting example. As someone who looks on paper, she should be a sane person thinking about the future because obviously she has children and probably grandchildren now.
She looks in her photographs like the archetypal grandmother,
Yeah,
with
German
the little
grandmother.
sweater and the
Yeah.
little collar and you know.
But then maybe in her case, like with the case of the guy who used to run Davos, maybe the old German culture of supremacy and is there. And you just switch it instead of saying we the people, the Volk, the German folk are the superior race. Now it's like we the superior elites, the oligarchy, we are the superior ones, and we hate you the folk, the unwashed masses, the hoi polloi of. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. It's just a theory out that I'm just
But it's
throwing
hard to
here.
understand, isn't it?
It's hard
That's the
to
key.
understand. It's hard to understand because they're all a bullet away from death, and that bullet is there already somewhere in Germany or in Europe. And you know, as you said, people are not yet to the point of hate, but they will be.
Or action.
And
They're not to the point of action.
hate and action. But certainly, you remember that poem from Kipling, "Beware the of the Saxon." I don't know it by heart, but and I'm not sure of the title. But if you Google Saxon and Kipling, you will see that that poem, which basically said, "Beware of the basically." And it can be any people, but he was, of course, in the 19th century, talking about the white race and the English race, as he would say at the time. It's very concepts that are not up to date of today, of course.
Hmm.
But he was bewaring that, when look at the history of Europe, we're not exactly the nicest and kindest people we can be, but generally, when we get mad and upset, we we damaged stuff. And so I don't see a lot of, my job is to teach people how to survive. These elites, I'm not betting on their survival for a long time, for
Yeah.
much longer,
Well,
physically
that suggests that they're extremely reckless.
or unconscious, or not conscious of the risks.
Yeah.
And that could be because they are in a bubble. I'm sure, I was talking with someone who works in Washington, D.C. The other day, and he was telling something I saw last time I was there was the same. And I'm sure you used to see the same in New York, or people who live in the same very wealthy and protected environments are in an environment where they don't, and after a while they forget the rest of the world if they ever knew it.
Hmm.
Could it be that?
Oh, sure. That explains why these idiots in Hollywood behave the way they do, because
You
they're
mean
so.
raping children?
No, 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 no.
Not that, not
Well,
just that.
I personally, I don't know whether they do or not. It's possible that some of them do, but they live a very coddled existence, a very cosseted existence, very cushioned from the rest of the world, and they don't really know what's going on, and yet you get a room full of them. And what do? They actually do the female thing. They seek the group of agreement on, and approbation, the applause of the group for making a ridiculous statement like, get, ice out.
Yeah.
And
Well, they
that's
sure
what they
don't
did
make
the
good
other
movies
night.
anymore. They don't make
Hmm?
good movies anymore, for sure.
Well, no, the movie industry is dying in the
Yeah.
United States anyway, and it's very sad. All of I wrote a little bit about this yesterday in my Monday piece that all of the cultural artifacts of our time are now in danger.
Yeah.
The record album has been gone for 30 years, and we never hear about new musicians anymore. And musicians can't make a living. The people won't go to see them in the cafe because the drinks cost too much. And so that's dead. The novel, which is storytelling, people don't read books anymore. So that's dying.
Yeah.
The motion picture seemed to be an indestructible part of modern life. And
Yeah.
yet it seems now to be going away.
Yeah.
And there's some expectation that it will be replaced by video games that you participate in, and you enter a world that you then help create. And that's possible that something like
Maybe.
that will happen, but I'm not too optimistic about the whole AI internet system. I have a feeling that, once the electric grid starts to flicker, that's going to be the end of AI and the end of all of our, wet dreams about.
We will not get to wrestle with Terminators.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that it's going to be more like scratching a living out of the ground. The people in Europe are going to be wearing those little leather helmets that you see in the Bruegel paintings,
Yes.
and they'll be scratching at the ground with a stick, trying to grow a pea.
Yeah. But that's after we stop killing each other because we like to kill each other after a
Yeah, it's a
while.
slaughterhouse.
It's a tradition in Europe.
Yeah,
James, thank you very much. Before we finish, I have one last question, which is a little bit on a different topic, or maybe
yeah.
it isn't. Um, Now, are we going to release this Epstein file, or
Oh, they're
and
released.
what and when they are released by little, what lesson are we learning from it?
So far, not a whole lot. We've learned that Epstein was involved in a lot of financial shenanigans and some kind of crypto diplomacy between parties who are generally not regarded as friendly. Like, he will be a middleman between some Middle Eastern arms dealer and a European bank. And so there was a lot of that. So far, there's no, smoking gun item that has come out about a major political figure who can be proven as a child molester or somebody screwing a 14-year-old girl or there's some question about I think the demonic practices that might have been going on around him and his people. And they have, as the Assistant Attorney General said on TV last night, we have released a pile of documents that are twice as high as the Eiffel Tower. And they're all out there now, and it takes a long time for people to go through them. And it's only been a week. So the answer to your question is God knows what we're going to discover. But it's all out there now, and the chips are going to fall where they may.
Yeah. It certainly reminded me when I saw a few of the news these last few weeks, a few of the data that came out. It reminded me of Nero and Caligula in
Oh,
ancient Rome. I mean, this where when suddenly you have certain people in certain positions of power who run amok and without no internal control and outside control into and even if this guy, and it looks like it, was controlled by some intelligence services, um, he must even have been run amok from them because,
yeah,
or they were amok with him. But clearly, it's beyond rational. It's a
yeah.
sign of the collapse of
Yeah, I think so.
society.
Although, as I said, nothing has really resolved yet. So we're standing. The simple answer is we're still standing by
Yeah,
to see what happens.
yeah. Fascinating times for me, at least.
It certainly is.
James, I thank you very much, and
It must be
we'll talk again for
must
sure.
be cocktail time where you are.
It is time for another interview, in fact.
Okay, Piero,
But
thank
thank
you
you
very
very
much,
much.
and we will ride again.
We will. I'll send you the link so you can share it on your podcast as well.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.